The stories are the stuff of legend. Case files that read like crime novels, filled with characters almost too brutal to be believed. Take Salvatore Gravano, better known as Sammy the Bull. He was the underboss of the Gambino crime family, John Gotti's right-hand man. By his own admission, Sammy the Bull was involved in 19 murders. 19. He described them in cold, clinical detail. And for his testimony, the testimony that finally put the Teflon Don away for life, Gravano served a mere 5 years in prison. He then walked into the sunlight, into the waiting arms of the Witness Protection Program, a free man. Then there was Alpo Martinez, a different kind of monster, from a different world. Martinez was a notorious drug kingpin who reigned over the streets of Harlem in the 1980s. His name was synonymous with violence and betrayal. He was a flamboyant, ruthless figure who, by his own account, committed or ordered at least 14 murders. He killed his best friend and his business partners without a second thought. Facing a life sentence or possibly the death penalty, Martinez made a deal. He testified against his own organization, and after serving a fraction of his potential sentence, he too vanished into WITSEC, given a new identity and a fresh start. And we mustn't forget Abraham Abe Rodriguez. His story is perhaps even more jarring. As a leader of a violent Chicago drug gang, Rodriguez was a suspect in dozens of shootings and at least 2 murders. He was a predator who terrorized neighborhoods, but he had information. He knew the inner workings of a network that stretched across the country. So, the government made a pact with him. In exchange for his cooperation, the murder charges vanished. He was never prosecuted for taking a human life. Instead, he was given protection, a new name, and the freedom to walk away from his bloody past as if it never happened. These are not isolated incidents. They are marquee examples of the program's most profound dilemma. Sammy the Bull, a man who confessed to 19 murders, was rewarded with his liberty. Alpo Martinez, a king of cocaine and death, was handed a new life. Abraham Rodriguez, a gang leader, had his murder charges wiped clean. These men were not just witnesses, they were infamous criminals in their own right. Their freedom was the price paid to convict others. But looking at the sheer brutality of their own confessed crimes, one must ask, was the price too high? Was justice truly served, or was it simply traded away? Starting over isn't cheap, especially when the government is footing the bill. When a witness like Sammy the Bull or Alpo Martinez enters the program, their old life is incinerated, and a new one must be built from scratch. This process is meticulous, and it is costly. The U.S. Marshals Service, which runs WITSEC, becomes a combination of travel agent, real estate broker, and life coach for some of the nation's most notorious criminals. The first expense is relocation. Witnesses and their families are moved to a new, undisclosed location, often thousands of miles away from their old haunts, a place where no one knows their name or their dark history. Once relocated, the financial support begins. These new lives don't just magically appear. The government provides housing, sometimes for months, until the witness can get on their feet. There are living expenses to cover: food, utilities, clothing. For a period, the program provides a monthly stipend, a salary for being a witness. According to government reports, this can amount to as much as $60,000 a year, though it varies by case. This is taxpayer money, your money, being paid directly to confessed murderers and drug traffickers so they can start fresh. They may even receive assistance in finding a job or starting a new business. The benefits extend beyond simple cash and housing. The most valuable asset provided is a new identity. This is a complex and expensive undertaking. The Marshals Service works with other federal and state agencies to create a complete set of legitimate documentation. New birth certificates, new driver's licenses, new social security cards. It's a bureaucratic rebirth. For witnesses with families, the process is multiplied. Spouses and children also receive new identities, their lives forever altered by a deal made by their father or husband. The cost of this intricate paperwork, this official erasure and recreation of a person, adds significantly to the overall expense, and so men who once made their living through extortion and violence find themselves on a federal payroll. Sammy the Bull, after his release, even started a swimming pool installation business in Arizona under his new name. The government provided the seed money for a new, legitimate life. The irony is staggering. The same system that prosecutes citizens for tax evasion is simultaneously funding the retirements of mob killers. The justification is always the same. It's a small price to pay for their testimony. But when you add up the costs, the housing, the stipends, the new identities, the security, For thousands of witnesses over decades, that small price becomes a monumental, ongoing expense. The promise of WITSEC is one of transformation. A criminal renounces his old ways, helps the government, and in return is given the chance to become a law-abiding citizen. It's a nice idea, a clean break. But can a wolf truly change its nature simply by moving to a new forest? The case of Sammy the Bull Gravano suggests a chilling answer: no. After leaving prison and entering the program, Gravano settled in Arizona. He had a new name, a new face thanks to plastic surgery, and a new business. He was, for all intents and purposes, a model of the program's success. He even co-wrote a book about his life and appeared on national television, his face shadowed, to tell his story. But the quiet life, it seems, was not for him. The thrill of the criminal underworld, the easy money, the power, it was a siren song he could not resist. By the late 1990s, the man the government had spent a fortune to protect and rehabilitate was back in business. He wasn't fixing pools anymore. Sammy the Bull, the former mafia underboss, had become an ecstasy kingpin. He built and ran a massive drug ring that spread the party drug throughout Arizona and beyond, a multi-million-dollar enterprise that involved his own family, including his wife and children. The rehabilitated witness had become a drug lord. In February 2000, the charade came to an end. Sammy Gravano was arrested, along with nearly 36 members of his new crew. The man who had confessed to 19 murders and been rewarded with freedom was now caught peddling drugs to a new generation. The irony was lost on no one. The government's star witness, the man whose testimony had been hailed as a triumph of justice, had used his second chance to create a new criminal empire. He had made a mockery of the very system that had saved him. This time, there would be no lenient deal. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Gravano's spectacular failure casts a long, dark shadow over the entire witness protection program. It raises the most fundamental question: does it actually work? If you take a career criminal, a man who has lived his entire adult life by a code of violence and profit, can you truly expect him to become a 9-to-5 working stiff? Or are you simply relocating a public safety threat? Alpo Martinez, another infamous graduate of the program, was eventually released and in 2021 was shot and killed in his old Harlem neighborhood, suggesting he too may have been drawn back to the life. These cases force us to confront the reality that old habits don't just die hard, sometimes they don't die at all. When a man like Sammy the Bull walks free after admitting to 19 murders, the very definition of justice comes into question. Is justice simply about securing a conviction? Is it a mathematical equation where imprisoning 20 criminals is worth the freedom of one, regardless of his own guilt? Or is justice something more profound? Is it about accountability, about paying a debt to society for the lives you have broken and the harm you have caused? For the families of the 19 people Gravano killed, his freedom was not justice. It was an insult. It was a declaration that their loved one's life was worth less than the government's need for a conviction against John Gotti. The scales of justice are meant to be blind, to weigh the facts impartially. But in these cases, the scales seem deliberately tilted. The government places a thumb on one side, adding immense weight to the value of the testimony. The crimes of the witness, no matter how heinous, are placed on the other side and are made to seem lighter in comparison. A murder charge for Abraham Rodriguez is simply wiped away. 14 murders committed by Alpo Martinez are reduced to a modest prison sentence. This is not blind justice. This is a calculated trade-off, where the moral clarity of right and wrong is sacrificed for the strategic goal of a prosecution. This raises a deeply uncomfortable question for the public. Who is the justice system truly serving in these arrangements? Is it serving the community by removing a larger criminal network from the streets, or is it serving its own institutional need for high-profile convictions? The public is told to accept this bitter pill, to understand that these are the tough choices that have to be made in the messy reality of fighting crime. But it is difficult to see a man who has taken a life, or many lives, living comfortably in a new town, with a new identity, and call that a victory for society. It feels more like a defeat. Ultimately, the freedom of these infamous witnesses sends a disturbing message. It suggests that if your crimes are big enough and if you have information that is valuable enough, you can negotiate your way out of accountability. It creates a perverse incentive structure where the most deeply embedded, and therefore most violent, criminals have the best bargaining chips. The small-time crook goes to jail, but the serial murderer with inside knowledge gets a deal. That is not a system of justice we can or should be comfortable with. It's a system of expediency, and the cost is our own sense of fairness and moral order.